Welcome to the Zen Hustlers Balance podcast. My name is Jared Brick, the creator of Zen Hustlers. We started Zen Hustlers because I was on my own personal journey, going through the hustle, staying up till midnight, 2 a.m., burning the midnight oil, and really feeling like I wanted to be productive. I wanted to have an impactful work life, but I was burning out and things were not working. Things were falling apart and breaking. This was about 2015, 2017. And I just moved to Santa Cruz and I realized, hey, wait a minute. I want to have more balance in my life. I was raising 2 children and I really wanted to find that Zen balance. And that's where Zen Hustlers was born. So throughout the years, we create free resource community to give back to the busy people in the world who want to have that balance on the edge, as we call it. And we started the podcast and the interview series because we want to talk to the people who are walking the talk. People have been through their own personal journey and they want to give back with the work that they do in the world. And today we are blessed to have John Murphy here. John is an author, a speaker, a business consultant. He travels the world doing different global events. And so thank you for joining us, John. This has been a long time coming.
Yes, Jared, it has. I'm glad to be here.
Good. So what is it, when you think of your experience, what is it that really stands out to you that you're most proud of or excited about?
Well, I live the life of Zen, Jared. I live a life of flow, creativity, where I'm blessed with certain gifts, as we all are. And the secret to life and passion is giving those gifts away. So people search for their purpose in life and they think of it as a job or something like that. My advice is think about your gifts. What have you been blessed with? And then turn those into something to give away. It's almost counterintuitive and paradoxical. Why would I give away what I want? And the truth is, the more you give away, the more you receive. You know, it's a karmic law. It's the law of attraction. The more I give and what I give comes back to me. So if I give more and more love, I receive more and more love into my life. If I give more and more inspiration and joy and help and service, all kinds of help comes my way. And I call that flow. We get into a zone. Athletes often call it a zone. We're riding the wave of life. Everything's about energy. Einstein said that, Nikola Tesla. If you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That's a quote from Nikola Tesla. And Einstein said, everything is energy. Match your frequency to the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It's as simple as that. This is not philosophy. This is physics. That's a direct quote from Einstein. I could go on all day. I mean,
No, we will. Thank you. I'm going to draw from all that you're saying. So where do you find the best way to share your gifts? Is it through the writing, speaking, or is it all of it that you do? Like, where do you find the most passion in your own work?
Yeah, well, I had to search for that, Jared, because it's one thing to know what you want to offer, and the next thing is how and when and where and who. And that's when I wrote the book Zentrepreneurs. Every chapter started with a question. Chapter number 1, what if? What if I change careers? What if I try something different? What if? And it opens up your mind. It's contemplative, even mystical in a sense. Chapter 2, why do it? What are the reasons behind it? Chapter 3, why not do it? What are the forces against it? So the whole idea is to ask yourself, you get to the chapter how. And who? Who can help me with the how? Because when I started my practice 36 years ago, I didn't know what I was doing. I had just left an executive business, a role. You mentioned earlier that, you were felt out of balance. I did too. I mean, I had 2 young children. It was like, when did I sign up for this? And I was in a company with about 500 people, Jared, and my dream was to help 500 million. I want bigger and more than that, and I want to do it in a very balanced way where I'm writing my own job description and I'm not following the rules that somebody else wrote. So there's a free spirit in me, and so I had to figure out the how, and that led me into. I had somebody tell me 30 plus years ago, John, if you want to really make it in consulting, you got to write a book.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how. to write a book. So I read.
Which was the first? Was Zentrepreneur the first book that you wrote, John?
No, that was like my 18th book.
Oh my God!
the first
How many books have you published now?
20.
20 books. Nice.
Yeah. And I'll tell you a quick story here, Jared, because that first book I wrote called Pulling Together the Power of Teamwork, I made all kinds of mistakes with it, but it sold out. It's now been republished by 4 different publishers in multiple languages, and it's a big time seller. And Pulling Together was the first book I wrote, which I read a book about how to write a book, because this is long before the internet was available. It was long before social. This was like I had a ready-to-assemble desk. I had a cord phone, no such thing as cordless or wireless, and I had a desktop. There weren't even laptops at this time.
Yeah.
And so I got this book written, and then my brother, who's actually now a professor at Notre Dame, he said, John, you should write an allegory, because he had read the book. It said, you tell good stories. Write an allegory. I didn't know what an allegory was, Jared, which is more like a novel. Where you learn by reading a novel. And I wrote a novel that went on to make the national newspapers, Agent of Change, Leading a Cultural Revolution is what it called. And then another university professor of mine who read it said, John, you need to write that's a sequel to this. It's teed up for a sequel. And I was like, it is? So The Who really helped me, Jared, with the how. But the key is, and this is for everybody, you gotta get out of your own way. You gotta listen, and you gotta ask for constructive advice, and not have your feelings hurt. You really have to open yourself and sort of, surrender your ego, my will be done, to a much greater power. When you ride that wave, it's powerful. And the next thing, you just have to steer it. But you got all kinds of energy flowing through you, and I could tell you more about it.
I want to go back for a minute to something you mentioned. Thank you for sharing that. When you were out of balance, what did that look like for you? Because for everybody, it's a little bit different, and we want to really talk to the specific challenges that people are dealing with. So when you realized it, what did it look like within you? So you really recognized it.
To put it simply, I didn't see my oldest daughter awake for a lot, like during the week. So I mean, I was up at 5 o'clock, 5:30. I'd go to the gym, and fitness has always been important to me. I'd get into the office early. I'd get home after dinner a lot of times. She was an infant and would be in bed. And I'd get up in the middle of the night if she was crying and rock her. But I was like, this is not the kind of father I want to be. And so I gotta get out of this, find more balance in my life. And then I did.
Yeah. And were there any physical or mental challenges you were dealing with?
Not at the time. I mean, I felt, I'll tell you one thing is when I graduated from the University of Notre Dame with a degree in finance, went into corporate finance for a huge company in Chicago for a couple of years and hated my job. I was like, man, did I ever screw up? I don't want to sit here and crunch numbers the rest of my life. But I was directed to get a finance degree because it was a tough business discipline. I was an A student, pick the toughest, John. I did, but then I left Chicago. I moved back to my hometown in Michigan. I took a pay cut, a real step back to get into human resources, into more of a people role. I really loved that. So I had made a correction already. And I'll tell you, the big wake-up call, though, was, I was a competitive athlete. I played football at Notre Dame, and I was a very competitive athlete.
Oh, you did? Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's a big school to play football at. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And as a quarterback, you are in a leadership position, so you've got to handle things with a sense of poise and grace. You can't show up afraid. You got to, you got to hold the team together with confidence and what we call poise and a sense of grace. And I came into the business world first in Chicago and then in Michigan, and I discovered that, where's the teamwork? It was just a lot of this back and forth and finger pointing, and it was uncomfortable for me. So that was a big factor, and that's one of the things then that inspired me to get into the team building business, so to speak, and writing the book, Pulling Together, it was because I was witnessing the opposite. And I was like, boy, could the business world ever use a little help with this?
Yeah, sports is always a great metaphor, and not even a metaphor for you. You've lived it as a leader, as a quarterback. And, it's not surprising to me that you've gone into leadership training, coaching in that world, because consulting, because that's a great start. Even most people talk about it metaphorically. So you get to talk about it in reality, which is great.
That's right. And I use this as a metaphor for the day,
yeah,
because we live in a world of uncertainty right now. It's just like, people are stressed out and they're worried. But I'll tell you what, as a quarterback, you approach the line of scrimmage to execute a play. You have a play called. You have goals. They fit into a game plan. You have a strategy. You've studied your competition all week, game films, things like that. You know what you want to happen. And then the ball is snapped, and you don't know what's going to happen. Every play is full of uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
So how do you approach your day? And I teach this to people. Do you approach the day with like, oh no, what's going to go wrong? Stress and fear. Because fear is just a projection of the untrained mind. When we're afraid, we're projecting something into the future that could go wrong. That's what scares us. What if I screw up this interview? What if I screw up this speech? What if I screw up this interview? What if I flunk my exam? Doesn't matter. If we project something negative, we feel fear. And people can change that. We can change the tune energetically, so to speak, and say, you know what? If I'm going to think about anything or assume anything, because these are all assumptions, I'm going to assume we're going to score.
Well, it takes that mental trick. So did you learn this from a coach? Like, where did you learn some of these insights from? Was it readings, coaching, mentorship, community?
Yeah, well, I had a coach in high school. We won the state championship in Michigan in 1976. And the coach, God bless his soul, he's passed. But I remember one time he said to me, Murphy, the day I stop yelling at you is the day I've given up.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I guess it's good if you yell at me. But the word that comes to my mind is that word poise. And and back then it was just like when you walk up to that line of scrimmage, you walk up there with confidence and poise, because if you don't, it's game over. And you stay present. You got to be present. It's like, and I think about golfers. If you're teeing up a shot and you're bummed because you screwed up a shot, 3 holes back, you're not going to win a whole lot of tournaments. You won't win any.
No.
And so you got to forget about the last play. You got to forget about the past. It's gone. And you got to focus on what's in front of me right now.
Yeah, hyperpresence and flow state. And it's not surprising that because we talk a lot about flow state and staying in that hyper-connected time dilation, where you're really in the zone. A lot of athletes do it, but a lot of people in business are now talking about it. So how do you kind of introduce flow state to your business work and the business world?
Well, the first thing I do to wake up leaders, starting with the very senior leaders, the executives, the C-suite, is we run what we call baseline analysis. So what happens is I form a team internally with the company, and we dig up, let's just say, the dirt. We dig up the facts, what we call UDs, undesirable effects, and they are fact-based. And so we'll take a value stream from beginning to end, cross functions, to the customer. And the customer's experiencing late deliveries, something's wrong, so they're calling up and complaining. There's customer dissatisfaction. So that's a UD right there. We find out why is that happening? Well, because we're late. The stream is full of undesirable effects. And when we bring the executives in and tell them the story, from here to here, it takes 143 days. And the customer still hasn't got resolution. And this is a fact, because I did a Kaizen event last week in Oxford, England, and there was a 143-day process end to end, and the customer still didn't have resolution. And when senior people see that, they go, it's like that show Undercover Boss. I don't know if you've ever seen that. But
I've seen it. Yeah.
They're like, it's a wake-up call. Oh, my, we got to fix this. What are we going to do?
But they have to have an aha moment first.
Absolutely.
Is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, because they're not into the details like that. They're looking at the next acquisition. They're looking at, shareholder
They've
value.
got the big vision hat on and they're off. Yeah, they're not in the in the details. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at exactly how this company's making money.
Yeah.
What are you getting paid for? What is value in the eyes of the customer? Let's start with
this. This is like good, clean corporate consulting that I've experienced over the years. And then once they've had their epiphany moment, they're learning the insights of what's the problem. How are you getting them into that new flow state of, working and energy and connection?
Well, I'm getting them to wake up and be aware of, first of all, the ugly babies, if you want to call it that, the UDs. This is just not pretty. And the thing is, and I teach these black belts that I train, Lean Six Sigma black belts. Be very careful the way you present the data, because if you're not careful, it's like calling somebody's baby ugly, and you're going to have an emotional reaction. And, how dare you call my department or my business unit?
Of course, because the CEO has to take that ownership over it like a parent.
So the way we report it is almost like a journalist reporting live from Palm Beach, Florida. Here are the facts, and let the facts speak for themselves. And then they go, whoa. And the first question they tend to ask is, by the way, we say, if you dispute anything we say, you have to prove it. You have to prove us wrong. And they can't. Because the data we get is from them, from their people. So it's factual, and then it's not pretty. So that's sort of the burning platform. And they say, well, why is it like that? And how are you going to fix it? So we say, come back tomorrow. And we'll, through a series of root cause tools, we'll show you the root causes, and we're going to fix the problem at that level, not at the symptom level, because a lot of companies focus on symptoms and, upgrade their fries and their drinks, and that's good enough. But we want to get down to the root causes, and then they come back, and the whole process, Jared's about what I call alignment. Because a lot of businesses are not aligned. There's all kinds of friction and conflict. They're not in balance. So by bringing them into balance, aligning on the facts, aligning on the root causes, aligning on the solutions, and the plan to implement those solutions, everybody's aligned. Who's going to argue, right? And so we commission a very intelligent cross-functional team to do this, and it's powerful. It's a very powerful process. It's called Kaizen. We've talked about this.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, that you had done an event. So explain Kaizen to folks who haven't heard of it.
Yeah, Kaizen is a Japanese term, but it's actually two words made into one. So K-A-I, is essentially to take apart and make new. It's to change. And Zen, of course, is all about positive, balance, health, well-being, harmony, flow. So Kaizen is where we take a process apart that's not in flow, it's not smooth, it's not in balance, there's constraints, and we make it flow. So we make value flow to the customer seamlessly.
What role do you play in that? Are you a participant? Are you a leader in that organization?
I'm the instructor, first of all. I teach it. I teach the different tools, the root cause analysis tools, process mapping tools, risk mitigation tools. There's a whole toolbox, so to speak. So I teach them about Kaizen, about the methodology, and then about the tools we'll use to get results. A typical Kaizen, so Kaizen is to make good change. A Kaizen event is to do it in a week. We're not going to take a year and have meetings and and just waste a lot of time. We're going to do it in a week. So we're going to prepare ahead.
Hyper efficient. I like that. It seems hyper efficient.
It's super, and it's a change in culture, because it's not the way we do things around here. Normally we meet, nothing's changing. In this case, 30 days before the event, I train the team. For 30 days, we collect data on a targeted process. We come into the event, and it's not pretty, the current state, and we take the team through the week, and by Friday, we've actually implemented changes. If we haven't implemented the changes, I explain that's not a Kaizen event. That's a meeting. Don't start calling old practices new words. You kill the credibility.
Yeah.
So anytime somebody says, John, hey, we ran a Kaizen event last week, I will say, what did you change? What's different? Oh, well, nothing's different yet, but we got some great ideas. Nope, that's not a Kaizen event. That's a meeting, and in some cases, a very expensive meeting if you're flying people in from different parts of the world.
Yeah. And that's the old model, right? And that's the old model that people are normally used to. So I'm sure they need a leader to guide them along a new process, like anything.
Yeah, so I instruct, I educate, and then I facilitate the event. So I keep people out of the weeds. I keep them aligned. Each day we have a mission, and it's because the wheels can fall off easily in these things.
And I wanted to reference that because leaders, you're talking to the entire leadership group, or you're forming a small group?
Well, we have the leaders aim us. So what's really a mess? Yeah. And they know it's a mess. They don't know why necessarily. So, John, can you just fix this? So we write a charter, and the charter clarifies the mission. It's what are we doing? Why is this important? Who's going to be on the team? What competencies and experiences do we need? A lot of people, Jared, are in these different siloed parts of the company. They have no clue what the other ones are doing. So we look at it horizontally, and they're like, oh, I had no idea that's what you experience when we don't do this. Yeah. The empathy, the comprehension, the collaboration just opens up people's minds. I often say this, a great Kaizen event isn't just about changing a process for the better. It's about changing minds.
Yeah, I would think so. So when you find that in an organization, I don't know what size we want to reference, like if the leadership is really on a track that's pulling everybody down, or the pyramid of the company is really not feeding up to leadership, how do you address that? Because both ways can really impact the company, right? The base of the company can really impact leadership, and the leadership can obviously downplay onto the company. So how do we help leaders find that balance, find those events, even to want to say, hey, John, I want to hire you to come out. So they have to have that insight too. So obviously there's an awakening of like, we need some help. But where do you see that plug and play of like the down pyramid and the top of the pyramid?
Yeah, well, there's three critical factors at a high strategic level. And one is top down, one is across, and the other is bottom up. So top down is what we call deployment. The senior executive suite has to deploy this. Operational excellence is what it's often called. Lean Six Sigma,
Lean Six Sigma,
Yep. They have to own it and say, we're doing this. It's not optional. We've got to get lean. We've got to get better. Yeah. So we're doing this. If that piece isn't there, you don't get the traction and the support that you need cross-functionally. Yeah. A second piece is we've got to have the knowledge. We got to know how to do this stuff. Because in the absence of lean training, Jared, people do just the opposite. People complicate things. People add when they should be deleting. I call it the closet space syndrome. We start filling up our closets with stuff, and then the next thing you know, we think we need more closets, bigger closets, walk-in closets. No. Lean says, why don't we go through the closet and see what you don't need? And here's the thing. We do exactly the same thing with time. We fill up our time with gibberish, and then we think I don't have time. We need more time. Give me another week. It's ridiculous. So lean is about hitting the delete button much more than the let's add button. Yeah. And so if we don't develop the organization through education and knowledge and training, they would do just the opposite. And you go through a Kaizen event, you say, well, here, we need a new software. Or we need a new technology. We need more people, more training. No, you don't. No, you don't. You have all the resources you need right now if you just get out of your own way. So that's the education piece. The third piece is bottom up. The change comes from the front line. It comes from the players. The execs aren't going to make the changes. They don't know how. They're just going to say, make the changes. We're going to teach you how to make the changes in an intelligent way, and then we're going to make the changes. Yeah. So those three factors are essential. And, you asked about how do you get, senior people to understand this, John? For 30 years, Jared, I haven't made a sales call. I get called because a senior leader leaves one company for a promotion at some other company, CEO,
Yeah.
and realizes we're tripping all over ourselves. What are we going to do? Call Murphy, get him in here. Let's do this analysis. Let's start targeting Kaizens. Let's get people trained, and let's lean it out. So it's very measurable. It's not. I'm not going in and talking Zen and teaching, yoga. Nothing wrong with that. I do it myself.
Yeah.
This is it's Zen in business terms.
Yeah.
It's bringing balance and harmony and rhythm and flow to the culture where it just feels good to be in this energy.
Yeah. And then other than financial success of the business, what are the metrics that you guys track around success metrics?
Lean works backwards. It starts with value in the eyes of the customer. Who's using what we're making? And by the way, we have to be careful of that because a lot of times what we make goes to a distributor, goes to a wholesaler, goes to a distributor, eventually gets to, let's think about healthcare. A drug, a medication goes through all of these channels, eventually gets to the patient who uses it and doesn't want side effects.
Yeah.
Okay. There is so much waste in that stream. It's ridiculous.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So Lean says, well, who's the end user? Who's the driver of the car? Not the dealership. Okay. It's who's driving the car. And let's identify what they want in terms of value and move upstream. And what we find out is 90% of what we do in most businesses is not value added. Some of it's necessary. We got to account our books. We got to stay compliant with the law.
Yeah.
But it's not considered value in the eyes of the customer. They want it on time. So time is a measurement.
Okay.
It's our on time,
Getting
in full.
timely fashion. Yeah.
Quality is a measurement. It works. So I get it when I want it. It works. It solves my problem. And you think about a good model of this is Amazon. Jeff Bezos, when he started Amazon, said, we're just going to skip all the middle people and go right to the reader, because Amazon started as a book seller. We're just going to go right to the reader, and we're going to figure out what do they want. And that led to innovations like the Kindle. Do they even want a physical book with ink and carbon footprint and glue? Or can we just beam it to them? Because what they really want is what's in the book. That's a completely different paradigm. And then you got companies like Orders Books. By the way, when I started writing books, Jared, 30 plus years ago, Amazon was just getting started, and I vended to Amazon, also to Borders Books, Barnes & Noble, etc.
Barnes & Noble, all the
Orders Books
stores,
is gone. Great, big,
they're completely gone.
Company, they're gone because they said,
Barnes & Noble's is probably not far behind, I would say. Yeah.
Barnes & Noble was able to adjust fast enough to get people e-books. By the way, not everybody wants an e-book. Some people want the physical book, of course.
Yeah.
So the idea is we'll offer you either one. You pick.
Yeah.
But Bezos...
And now I believe this is going to be the new platform because audiobooks have, I think, surpassed physical books now. Yeah.
Yeah, and think about win-win-win. As an author, you get paid a higher royalty for an e-book because there's less cost.
Yeah.
There's no transportation costs. There's no distribution costs. There's no warehousing. It's boom.
Yeah.
So
it delivers the value on a faster time path. So it really so those are great metrics that you guys are using. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reader can get it faster and anywhere. You could be sitting on an airplane or in a hotel lobby and beam a book. They can get it fast. They can get it at a lower price. So that's an illustration of Lean as a mature business strategy. Michael Dell did the same thing with Dell Computer. Back in the day when Dell got started, you didn't go to Best Buy or Circuit City, which is now gone. You didn't go there to get a Dell computer. You ordered it with an 800 number or eventually online. They made it and shipped it to you within a week. Made it. And shipped it to you. They didn't have warehouses.
I remember we were a customer as a home. Yeah, that was one of the computers we had growing up. Yeah.
So it's one thing when an entrepreneur like a Michael Dell, a Jeff Bezos is designing the company from day one.
Yeah.
With lean principles. That's one thing. Most companies are not.
No, those are the unicorns, and we love to talk about the unicorns, but they're not how 99% of the business functions in the world, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you have a leadership story that you'd love to recount that you'd like to share with us without sharing any private information?
Well, I guess one of my favorites, I was given an award by the Navy. I was doing a Kaizen event in Washington, D.C., the Department of Defense. I was literally had a nuclear physicist and engineers on this team, PhD engine scientists.
Impressive team to be on. Yeah.
I'm like, me? What am I doing here? And one in particular was not on board. He's like, John, there's no way we're going to get changes made in a week. You don't understand how we work. We're
on the Titanic here, John. We can't turn this ship. Yeah.
And I said, you don't have to trust me, but let's trust the process. The process works. I've done it hundreds of times. Let's trust the process. And he was disgruntled for Monday and Tuesday. And so I finally pulled him aside and I said, it doesn't seem like you want to be on this team, right? I mean, you're resistant. And he said, I don't have a choice. I was told I have to be on this team. And I said, well, I have the authority of the admiral to tell you don't have to be on the team. So Why don't you think about that? And if you don't want to be on the team, let's get out of the way. It was a very candid conversation. He came back on Wednesday. He's like, On Friday, he gave me a hug. And he said, John, you made a believer out of me. I can't believe we actually got changes made this week. One example of that was they needed a policy on something because the policy was either, I don't remember, it was messed up or they didn't have one where they needed one. They needed something, a policy. And so they were like, well, we don't write policy. That's got to go through all the channels or this or that. And I said, I'm a writer. Tell me what you want it to I'll write it. Tell me what you want it to say. So they did. We scripted a policy. I took it to the admiral on Thursday. He had it signed by the end of the week. They were like, that doesn't happen around here. I go, that's what we're changing. That's culture change. All right.
I was going to say, that's the next word I was going to say is like a toxic culture can bring down a company. We've seen so many examples of that in the modern era. So do you have any reference around culture change? Because that can be a big bottom-down, top-down issue too,
Absolutely. And, there's a famous quote from Peter Drucker who said, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
I've heard that.
I'm cautious of culture all the time. Culture is like gravity. You can't see it really, but it's
there.
Powerful.
And It's working. Yeah.
It's powerful. So there's this tendency to get these changes we make sucked back into the old culture. The model we use is called DMAIC, D-M-A-I-C. D is define the mission, define the current state, define the charter, define the team, define the target. M is measure. Prove it with data. Get the facts, reporting live kind of stuff. This is just the current state. It's like going to the doctor and getting a checkup. This is what's happening. A is analysis. Get to the root causes. We can't just solve things at the surface because the culture will eat it up and it'll just not go away. I is improve and more now innovate. Improve, innovate. Let's not improve something we should get rid of. Let's really think outside the box. C in DMAIC is control, and that's often what's left out. We get these improvements made. We're all high-fiving. This is great. And then there's no governance to hold it in place. So it's like, culture change like breaking a habit. And you've got to have something to keep you grounded for a long enough period where the new habit sticks, right?
Yep.
So control would be things like policy. We're going to write a policy to say this is the new procedure. We're going to write a new procedure. This new procedure goes live on Monday, and the policy says you're going to follow this. Training and education so that we know how to follow it. Things like poka-yoke. Poka-yoke is a Japanese term that means mistake-proof. If you wonder why I use a lot of Japanese terms, because lean, was really grown out of the Toyota production system in Japan. Yeah. Anyway, so poka-yoke means mistake-proof. Let's design a way where it can't go wrong. You can't fail. This is like automatic lights in your car. Don't worry about shutting them off. Well, we got you covered. We see poka-yokes everywhere now. They're like toilets that flush by themselves, all these things that, you don't worry about it. We got you covered. So the engineers are using like poke yolks as part of the C and, in DMAIC to make sure that whatever we change sticks.
Got it.
Right? If you put your credit card in and you don't put the address or the zip code or the CVV in accurately, it won't process. That's a poke yoke.
Okay. Got it. And then I'm worried about a lot of the remote work that's happened over COVID, where the culture has really fallen apart. A lot of companies are desperately trying to get people back into the office. Have you experienced this with your work at all? And have you addressed this at all?
I have, Jared. I've had to learn how to do my job virtually.
Yeah.
Because, as companies start to realize, well, we're spending a ton of money on travel, and a lot of employees don't want to come into the office. So, John, can you educate our people virtually?
Yeah.
What's missing from that, Jared, is a lot of my workshops are designed with hands-on simulations.
Yeah.
Even games, and you play a game where in round one it's not lean, but it represents the current way we do things.
Yeah.
Round
to show you the model that's not working. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you don't get the interactive energy. You don't get the in a room energy.
So how can a company deal with a remote team and a remote culture now and still be effective and strong? What are some of the strategies you recommended?
Well, they're learning. How do we find balance? Back to Zen, how do we find balance with this? Amazon's making essentially a dictate to say you're coming back to the office because we need you to play. I've gone into some of my clients where they've got 4 floors in a beautiful office building and 2 of them are empty.
Yeah,
which is expensive real estate, right?
Very much.
So,
I've been in this building. Yeah, it's interesting vibe. It's a very quiet, odd vibe, and half the people are remote and half are in, and it's a culture shock, I think, to a lot of companies. So that's why I wanted to kind of bring it up.
Yeah, in fact, there's a big, I won't mention the name, but it's a big, huge company. People know the name of it. They see it on the highways every day, and it's essentially closed its huge office building, moved into a much smaller office building where nobody has an office. It's all, you come in to work, you work in a
like a share, almost like a co-working shared space. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how well that's going to work, but companies are experimenting to figure out how to rebalance, I would say.
Well, I know one system. I've been on the calls where it's a Zoom call and the leadership team goes, does anyone have any questions? And it is crickets. And I always think that is a bad indicator of culture. When everyone is shut down, wants to get off the call, and it's silent like that, that to me is a red flag of culture. And so everyone should be skin in the game, have questions, have insight. And I wonder how, like, what's one quick strategy of how you can deal with that when your team is just silent when it comes to the Q&A?
First of all, turn your cameras on.
Yeah.
There's a policy statement right there where if you're going to be on a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever, you're going to turn your camera on, period. Because who knows what people are doing when the camera's off, If
I know. It's like, grab your phone, just, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, I know. There's so many distractions right at our fingertips right now, right?
Yeah. And the thing is also a good experienced instructor and facilitator is going to stimulate questions with intrigue. It's going to be interactive. So I might pause and say, I want you to write something down right now that's troubling you about this process. Go ahead. We're also using a tool for some of these called Lucid Spark. Lucid Spark, Jared, is essentially a virtual room with unlimited whiteboard. So we can all be looking, somebody shares the screen, we can all be looking at a whiteboard and there's Post-its on the side. So we could grab a Post-it, we could process map, we could do root cause analysis, we could write problem statements, we could come up with brainstorms, we could do all of that virtually looking at a common wall. Like if we were all in the room, we'd be standing up, putting Post-its on a whiteboard. Right?
Yeah, right. Here's your marker. Go right on the board. Yeah.
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 And it brings people in. So even though we're virtual, we're connected through this mapping process. And again, a good facilitator is going to make sure everybody's contributing.
So should companies be looking for meeting facilitators to outsource to or get trainings internally? Yeah.
I didn't catch the question. Sorry.
Sorry. Is it more about hiring a facilitator or training leadership to become those facilitators, or both?
It's both. And so whenever I work with a client, Jared, the company is identifying internal experts. These are, in fact, in many cases, I'm working with a big company in Toronto right now. They have master black belts in Lean Six Sigma, and they're still struggling. So they brought me in. They call me sensei. It's like
it's like a dojo. You're working in a business dojo. Yeah.
So and I discuss a lot of Six Sigma black belts just get into the weeds with data analysis paralysis. It's just like we got enough data to realize we have a problem. So let's move on and start solving things and things like that. So I'm always working with internal people. I'm considered a coach and a mentor, so that they observe what helpful, good facilitation looks like. They observe the model we use to keep people aligned throughout the week and keep them on track. Observe the experiential learning techniques that I use. By the way, I'll tell you a quick story going way back to listening. We opened this interview about saying how important it is to open up and listen and get out of your own way. My first public seminar, I rented space at a local college, and I went in and I did a half-a-day seminar workshop. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I had good content. And so I asked a university, a friend of mine that was working there, as to sit in and give me feedback. Long story short, we finished this workshop, and I said, Jane, what do you think? Give me some feedback.
Yeah.
I'll never forget this, Jared. She looked at me, she said, John, do you want the truth? When you hear those words,
you're like, okay, all right.
Because I had this coach in high school said, if I stop yelling at you, I've given up. I was like, yeah, of course, Jane, tell me the truth. She goes, your content was great, but I really think you should attend a train the trainer workshop or seminar. And here's one I recommend. This guy's great. But I had no money. It was the closest one was in Chicago. I'm in Michigan. It's expensive.
Yeah.
And so I had all these reasons, Jared, not to do it, including I got great evaluations from the people who attended it. I got 2 clients, including a bank who offered to loan me money. I could have easily said, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. Guess what? I went to the workshop. And I learned techniques. It's called Creative Training Techniques. I still remember the name of the workshop. Bob Pike. I still remember the instructor. 36 years ago. I learned some of the best techniques. So now I teach those. I demonstrate those. And these guys and gals who work with me, they're like, they're getting it. I designed an interactive simulation that's used in the Navy. It's used by Fortune 500s and 100s. I copyrighted it, I think, in the year 2000, so it's 24 years old. But I learned those techniques by going to this workshop that I could have easily not gone to.
Yeah. That's great. So we're wrapping up. I just want to give a last chance to kind of give up from a leadership perspective and, let's say, a young staffer at a company. What's some advice to kind of shifting some of these things we've talked about?
Yeah, find your gifts. We started out with that. Find your gifts, and
through like an assessment or like a skill finder. Or what tool do you like?
Think back to even when you were a child of moments of bliss. They're called moments of bliss. I wrote a book called Reinvent Yourself, and it's an allegory. So the character is he's been working as a plant manager. He got fired. He was disgruntled. He's just basically not a nice person. And so the counselor's working with him and said, well, what are your moments of bliss? And he's like, what? What do you do to de-stress? He goes, well, I go out in my garage and I make stuff out of wood. He loves woodworking. Long story short, the counselor helped him turn that into a business where he made ready-to-assemble birdhouses that could get fathers and daughters and sons together on a project. So there was a more meaning to it than just selling a birdhouse. Because his relationship with his sons wasn't good. So he was learning from, so you got to, I call it connect the dots. Think about, like in my case, I said, I want to travel the world. I want to inspire and teach millions of people, not hundreds. I want to use my creativity. That's what I consider one of my greatest gifts. Use my creativity to do that. Walt Disney, I'll close with this if you like. Walt Disney had a one-line mission statement. How many people have mission statements? Not that many. Companies will do it, but people often say, mission statement, what? Walt Disney's mission statement was to use my creativity to bring happiness to millions. That one line. Did he do it? Clearly.
Oh, yeah.
How millions later, but you got to figure out the what and the why. What can I do?
So tap into that joy, tap into that place, that bliss. I like that.
Yep. And in fact, because you'll know you're in the zone when you feel it. You get up in the morning, you just can't wait to get started.
And back to the energy you were sharing earlier.
Absolutely.
About energy. Yeah.
Yep. And I'll share one more tip. Find an asset to make money with. And I say that because when I was a kid, Jared, I'd go out and make money with a snow shovel. I'd go out and make money with a rake or a hoe. Yeah. I had gardening businesses, landscaping businesses. I helped my father pay for my older brother's first year of college tuition. I helped my older sister buy her first car. I'm this kid that knew how to make money because all I needed to do is get an asset and apply it. And I happen to like gardening. I happen to like making things look better. And so, if you have the right attitude and just a little bit of creativity, and we all have creativity and imagination, you can do anything. And you could even start something on the side.
I often recommend people, it doesn't have to be your full-time gig. Have a passion hobby. Have a side hustle that you love, that fulfills you so deeply. It does not have to be your main 9-to-5 gig.
Yeah.
We often recommend
learn.
People. Yeah.
Learn, read books. I mean, back when I started, I was a self-help junkie. There weren't all these YouTubes and all these easy access things. Back then, you actually read books.
You had to learn. Yeah, you had to go out and find it and learn it. Now it's at your fingertips.
Just learn from people already doing it.
Well, I've learned a lot today, John. This has been wonderful. Really appreciate all the different things we've talked about. I think there's obviously a wealth. We could go on for hours. So really appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation. We're going to put links to your work, your books, and your business consulting so that people can reach out to you to learn more. And just so thankful you took the time with us today.
Oh, you bet, Jared. Thank you. I'm all about helping people, and I know you are too.
That comes through. Well, if you're someone who's interested about learning more about this, definitely check out the links below. And remember, Zen Hustlers is a community that's around supporting you. It's resources, it's books, experts, events that you can attend, all the things that you can do to expand this part of you so that you have more balance on the edge. Thanks for listening. Feel free to subscribe if you like what we're sharing. And have a great day. Take care of yourself.